When the ruthless Louna burns the fragile Omega before the whole pack, she thinks it's over. But the moment the Alpha King steps out of the shadows, her nightmare begins. Because the girl she mocked, she's not who they think she is. Hey everyone, before we dive into today's video, please do subscribe to the channel. I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your country or city in the comments below. It truly amazes me how far our community reaches around the world. All right, now let's begin. The courtyard smelled of rain and blood. Dozens of wolves gathered in a cold half-circle, their eyes flickering gold under the dim torchlight. At the center, kneeling in the mud, was Lyra, the lowest-ranked Omega in the Crescent Fang pack. Her trembling hands clutched her tattered dress as Louna Seraphine, tall and cruelly beautiful, paced before her with the silver chalice glinting in her hand. "You think you can hide your scent from me, little rat?" Seraphine sneered. "You think you can flirt with my warriors?" Lyra's lips parted to plead, but before she could form words, the Louna tilted the chalice and acid splashed down. The world erupted into screams, flesh hissed. Lyra's vision blurred as pain tore through her body. The crowd didn't move. No one dared. And then, through the haze of agony, boots echoed across the courtyard, heavy, measured, commanding. The crowd parted, heads bowed. The Alpha King Kale, Draven, had arrived. Kale's presence alone made the air grow still. His dark coat brushed the wet ground as his glowing amber eyes locked on to Lyra's broken form. "Who gave this order?" His voice was low, deadly calm. Seraphine smirked, brushing invisible dust from her sleeve. "An Omega broke pack law, Your Majesty. I only delivered justice." But Kale's gaze didn't move from Lyra. His wolf stirred beneath his skin, restless, enraged. He knelt, the hem of his coat soaking in the mud, and lifted her chin gently. Half her face was blistered, her breaths shallow. "Justice?" His voice cracked the silence. "You call this justice?" The pack flinched as thunder rolled above them. Kale's power rippled through the night like a storm about to break, and Seraphine's smirk faltered for the first time. Lyra's lips trembled. She couldn't speak, only watch through tears as Kale stood, his height swallowing the torchlight. "Take her to the healer's den, now." Two guards scrambled forward, lifting Lyra with shaking hands. "And the Louna?" one dared to ask. Kale turned slowly, his amber eyes now burning molten gold. "She stays." The courtyard froze. Seraphine's breath hitched as Kale stepped closer, her shadow consuming hers. "If I find that this Omega's blood was spilled without cause, you won't like what I do next." The words weren't loud, but they carried the weight of death. As Lyra was carried away, her vision flickered, faces blurring, voices fading. But before the darkness swallowed her, she saw it. Kale looking at her not with pity, but with recognition, like he'd seen her before, like he knew her. That look burned brighter than the acid itself, and as the world went black, a single question echoed through her mind. Why did the Alpha King care about me? Lightning split the sky, rain began to fall, hissing as it hit the courtyard stones. Seraphine watched Kale's retreating form with trembling hands, her face pale beneath the stormlight. For the first time, the Louna's confidence cracked, because behind those cold, royal eyes, she had seen something terrifying. The Alpha King didn't just pity that Omega, he was protecting her. And that could only mean one thing. Lyra wasn't just another servant. She was something far more dangerous. The smell of herbs and smoke filled the healer's den. Lyra lay motionless on the narrow bed of furs, her skin glistening with the sheen of ointments. The acid burns had carved cruel lines down her neck and shoulder. Each breath she took rattled, shallow and painful. The healer, an old wolf named Mara, worked silently beside her, wrapping gauze, whispering prayers to the moon goddess. Outside, the rain fell harder, drumming against the roof like a restless heart. When Lyra stirred, pain flashed through her eyes, and her cracked lips parted with a whimper. "Rest, child," Mara murmured, wiping her forehead. "You're safe now." But Lyra knew safety was a lie. Omegas were never safe, not in a pack ruled by wolves like Louna Seraphine. Hours passed. The den's candles burned low, their light turning gold and dim. Lyra's thoughts drifted backward, to the day her life had been traded for servitude. She had been 8 when her parents vanished during a border raid, leaving her to the mercy of the Crescent Fang pack. They'd called her the stray pup, too small, too weak, too different. While others grew claws and strength, she learned silence and shadows. Every scar on her hands was a memory of obedience. But deep down, she carried something she never spoke of, something that frightened even her. A strange pulse inside her chest that sometimes burned beneath her ribs, glowing faintly beneath her skin during the full moon. She'd hidden it all her life, because if they found out what she really was, she wouldn't just be whipped, she'd be killed. A creak at the door snapped her from her thoughts. Lyra turned, her pulse quickening. Standing in the doorway was Alpha King KL, rain dripping from his coat, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Mara instantly bowed low. "Your Majesty," she whispered. KL nodded and motioned for privacy. When the healer left, silence filled the room. He stepped closer, every movement deliberate, his scent heavy with rain and pine. "I said he loved me when I was dead," Betty muttered. "I imagine you did," she-folk said. "You shouldn't have survived," he said quietly, eyes scanning her bandaged arm. Lyra blinked, unsure if it was an accusation or astonishment. "I'm sorry," she rasped, her voice fragile, "for breaking pack law." KL's jaw tightened. "What law? That you spoke to a warrior? That you breathed in the wrong direction?" His anger was soft but dangerous, like thunder before a storm. Lyra tried to sit up, but KL stopped her with a hand on her shoulder. His touch was warm, steady, nothing like the cold hands of her masters. "You remind me of someone," he murmured. "A girl I knew once, before the wars." His eyes softened for a heartbeat, then turned unreadable again. Lyra wanted to ask who, but the pain in her chest flared. She gasped, clutching her ribs. KL's eyes widened when a faint blue light pulsed beneath her bandages, just once, like a heartbeat of moonfire. Then it vanished. He froze, expression darkening. "What was that?" he whispered. Lyra turned away, trembling. "Nothing. Please, don't tell anyone." But KL wasn't listening anymore. He stared at her as if he'd just seen a ghost. "It can't be. That power, it hasn't existed in centuries." Outside, thunder shook the sky. KL's hand fell to his side, and for the first time since the coronation, the Alpha King looked afraid. "Rest," he said finally, his voice low but charged. "Tomorrow, I will return. There are things you and I must discuss." He turned and disappeared into the rain, his footsteps fading into the storm. Lyra lay still, her heart hammering in her chest. The light had betrayed her. She pressed a trembling hand over her ribs, whispering into the darkness, "Please, not again." As the wind howled outside, the healer's den grew cold. Somewhere in the pack house above, Louna Seraphine stared out her window, eyes burning with jealousy. She had seen KL leave the den. She had seen his expression when he looked at that girl. And deep inside, her wolf snarled with a single truth. Whatever secret that Omega carried, it could destroy them all. Morning came gray and heavy with mist. The forest surrounding the Crescent Fang compound whispered with unseen movement, and the scent of wet pine filled the air. Lyra sat on the edge of the healer's bed, her bandages damp against her skin. Every part of her ached, but she refused to lie down anymore. The events of the previous night replayed in her mind like shards of fire. Seraphine's laughter, the acid's burn, and most of all, the look in Alpha Kale's eyes when he saw her glow. She touched the spot on her ribs where the light had pulsed. It was faint now, but the memory of it still frightened her. For years, she had hidden that strange heartbeat of blue flame. Ever since she was a child, she didn't understand it, but she knew what it meant if anyone else did. She'd heard stories whispered in the dark of ancient bloodlines hunted to extinction. The Lunaris blood, descendants of the moon herself. No one survived. No one was meant to. A sudden knock startled her. Before she could respond, the door opened and Kale stepped inside, dressed in dark leather, his hair still damp from the morning fog. His eyes, sharp as amber knives, swept over her form. "You're awake." Lyra nodded timidly, fingers clutching the blanket. He took a step closer, his voice low but firm. "What I saw last night, that wasn't just healing light. That was something else." Lyra's lips trembled. "I don't know what it is," she whispered. Kale tilted his head slightly, unconvinced. "You do," he said softly, "but you've learned to hide it." His tone wasn't cruel. It was curious, searching, almost protective. "Tell me the truth, Lyra. What are you?" She looked away, tears brimming. "A mistake. A cursed thing." For a long moment, silence filled the den. Then Kale exhaled, the tension easing from his shoulders. "You're not cursed," he murmured. "You're hunted." Lyra blinked up at him, startled. He sat beside her, the bed creaking beneath his weight. "When I was a boy," he said, voice deep and distant, "my father told stories of a hidden bloodline, the Lunaris. They were said to be the moon's chosen wolves, born with the light instead of darkness. But the High Council feared them. They called them abominations. The last one was executed before I took the crown." He looked at her then, eyes unreadable. "Until last night." Lyra's throat tightened. "You're wrong. I'm no one. Please, just let me disappear." Kale shook his head slowly. "You can't disappear, Lyra. Not anymore." Outside, the courtyard stirred with voices. Seraphine's sharp tone carried through the morning air. "He's in there again?" she snapped to a guard. "With her?" Kale rose, his expression darkening. "Stay here," he ordered. But Lyra grabbed his wrist weakly. "Please," she whispered. "Don't fight her because of me." Kale turned, his eyes softening for a heartbeat. She drew blood first. He left before she could answer, his cloak sweeping behind him like a storm. Through the window, Lyra saw him step into the mist, where Louna Seraphine waited, her lips curved into a cold smile. The tension between them was sharp enough to cut air. "Your Majesty," Seraphine began sweetly, "you're spending a great deal of time with our little pet." Kale's jaw flexed. "Watch your tongue." "Why?" she mocked. "Are you protecting her now, that filthy Omega?" Her words echoed across the courtyard. Wolves nearby paused, sensing danger. Kel stepped closer, voice low and dangerous. "If you ever touch her again, you'll wish you hadn't." The Louna froze. His tone wasn't anger. It was promise. The pack watched in stunned silence as Kel turned and walked away, leaving Seraphine trembling in the fog. From the healer's window, Lyra saw it all. For the first time in her life, someone had stood between her and cruelty. But instead of comfort, fear bloomed in her chest, because the Alpha King had justified his Louna for her. And in a world ruled by power, that kind of mercy could only mean war. By nightfall, the Crescent Thing stronghold was humming with unease. Whispers ran like wildfire through the stone halls. Whispers of the Alpha King defending an Omega, of the Luna's fury, of something unnatural that had happened in the healer's den. Servants avoided Seraphine's path as she stalked through the corridors, her heels clicking like daggers against marble. Her eyes, usually the color of fresh wine, burned red with rage. She'd spent years building her image as the perfect Louna, beautiful, untouchable, cruel enough to command respect. And now, one scarred, trembling Omega had made her look weak before the entire pack. In her private chamber, Seraphine stood before the mirror, brushing her long silver hair with trembling hands. "He looked at her," she whispered to her reflection. "He chose her." Her wolf growled inside her chest, restless and jealous. On the vanity, a silver vial gleamed under candlelight, a concoction she'd stolen from the alchemist weeks ago. It shimmered like molten moonlight, dangerous and forbidden. "No one steals my place, not a rat, not even the moon herself." She turned to the door. "Guards!" 2 warriors entered, heads bowed. "Bring the Omega from the healer's den, quietly. No one must see." Meanwhile, Lyra sat by the fire in the healer's den, staring into the flames. Her bandages had been changed and the pain had dulled to a constant ache. Yet her mind was restless. She could still hear the Luna's voice in her nightmares, the cruel laughter, the sound of acid sizzling on her skin. She wanted to leave, to run into the woods and vanish forever, but her body wouldn't let her. And beneath her fear, something new was stirring. A faint hum in her veins, a pull she didn't understand. When she looked at the fire, she could almost feel it responding, flickering brighter when she breathed. "What's happening to me?" she whispered. The fire flared softly, as if answering her. The door creaked open. 2 guards entered, their faces hidden in shadow. "The Louna requests your presence," one said. Lyra froze. "Now?" "Now." She hesitated, but they grabbed her arms before she could protest. The walk through the corridors was silent, heavy with dread. When they stopped before the grand hall, the scent of jasmine and blood filled the air. The doors opened, revealing Seraphine seated on her throne, dressed in black silk that shimmered like oil. "Come closer," the Louna said sweetly. Lyra obeyed, trembling. "You've caused quite a storm," Seraphine continued, rising to her feet. "The king ignores me for you. The pack whispers. Do you know what that means, little one?" Lyra shook her head. "It means," Seraphine purred, "you're a problem I have to fix." With one swift motion, Seraphine hurled the silver vial toward her. Lyra barely had time to react before it shattered at her feet, releasing a burst of silvery smoke. The air grew thick, sweet, choking, alive. Pain exploded in Lyra's chest. She fell to her knees, gasping as her heartbeat turned into pulses of light. Her veins glowed blue, bright enough to illuminate the entire hall. The guards stumbled back in fear. Seraphine watched, wide-eyed, realizing too late what she had unleashed. The ancient power surged from Lyra's body, swirling into the air like ribbons of moonfire. Her scream turned into a roar, half human, half wolf. Far away, in the northern wing, Kel felt it, the surge of ancient energy shaking the ground. He froze mid-step, eyes flashing gold. "Lyra," he breathed, and ran toward the hall. The power that filled the air was something the world hadn't felt in centuries. By the time he arrived, the doors were blasted open, smoke curling into the corridor. Lyra lay unconscious in the center of the room, surrounded by shattered marble and light. And standing beside her, trembling, was Seraphine, her hands burned by the very magic she had tried to control. Kale's eyes turned to molten gold. "What have you done?" he growled. Seraphine's voice broke. "She's not one of us! She's a monster!" Kale stepped forward, his voice deadly calm. "No, Seraphine," he said, kneeling beside Lyra, his hand brushing her hair from her face. "She's something greater." Then he lifted his gaze toward his Louna, fury simmering beneath the surface. "You've declared war on the blood of the moon." The hall fell silent, the air humming with power and fear. For the first time, Seraphine took a step back, not from Kale, the king, but from Kale, the beast. And somewhere deep in Lyra's unconscious mind, the moon whispered her name, calling her to awaken. Darkness wrapped around Lyra like a cocoon. Her body floated weightless, surrounded by the faint hum of energy that pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. Voices echoed in the void, soft, ancient, and familiar. "Child of the moon," they whispered, "the blood remembers." She tried to open her eyes, but the light was too bright. Memories flickered behind her eyelids, her mother's hands glowing under moonlight, a lullaby sung in a language she had forgotten, and a promise: "Hide your light, little one. They will come for it." A single tear slipped down her cheek even in sleep. She wasn't supposed to exist. She wasn't supposed to survive. Yet here she was, breathing in the dark, her body mending itself with silver fire. When Lyra awoke, dawn had broken. The world was still. She was no longer in the hall, but in a guarded chamber draped with black curtains. Her burns were gone, her skin smooth again, pale and glowing faintly under the sunlight. She sat up slowly, clutching the sheets to her chest. Her reflection in the mirror made her gasp. The scars that had marked her since the acid had vanished. Her eyes, once dull gray, now shimmered like liquid silver. Panic fluttered in her chest. "No, no, no," she whispered. "They'll see." The door opened before she could hide. Kale entered. His presence filled the room instantly. Tall, quiet, carrying the scent of steel and storm. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, time stopped. "You're awake," he said softly, relief flashing in his eyes before he masked it. Lyra looked down. "You shouldn't have saved me." Kale frowned. "You think I had a choice?" He stepped closer, the light catching the scar that ran along his jaw, a mark from a war long past. "When you unleash that power, every wolf in the kingdom felt it. The council will come for you. They'll call you a weapon." Lyra's breath hitched. "Then I'll run." Kale shook his head. "You can't run from blood, Lyra." He paused, then his tone softened. "Do you know what you are?" She hesitated. "A mistake," she murmured again. "No." He knelt beside her, eyes glowing faintly. "You're the last of the moon bloodline, born from the goddess herself." Her heart pounded. "That's impossible. They were all killed." Kale's voice dropped lower. "So was my family. Yet here I stand." Silence hung between them, thick with unspoken truths. Lyra looked up slowly. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. Kale hesitated. "Because once, long ago, a woman with your eyes saved my life. And now, the moon has sent me the same eyes again." His words made something inside her tremble, a flicker of recognition she couldn't explain. But before she could respond, the door burst open. Mara, the healer, stumbled inside, fear in her voice. "Your Majesty, Luna Seraphine has summoned the council. She told them the girl carries forbidden magic." Kale's expression hardened instantly. "She's moving faster than I expected." He turned to Lyra. "Listen to me. If the council arrives, they'll demand your execution. They fear what they can't control." Lyra's breath hitched. "Then what do I do?" Kale looked at her, really looked at her, and the answer was carved in his eyes. "You learn to fight." His tone was quiet, but it carried the weight of destiny. "Your power woke last night. If you can master it before they arrive, you might survive what's coming." Lyra swallowed hard. "And if I can't?" Kale's jaw tightened. "Then they'll burn the world trying to kill you." Outside, the morning sun bled through the mist, casting silver light across the fortress. In the distance, a single horn echoed from the northern border, a call of arrival. The council had come. Lyra's heart raced. The girl who once cleaned the floors of the Crescent Fang Pack was now the center of a storm that could shatter kingdoms. And as the sound of the horn faded, the moon's whisper returned inside her mind. "You were never meant to hide, child. You were meant to rise." By midday, the fortress was drowning in tension. The great hall had been transformed into a chamber of judgment. Torches flickered against stone walls, casting long shadows that seemed alive. Outside, hundreds of wolves gathered, whispering rumors that spread like wildfire. The Moonblood Girl, the cursed Omega, the king's forbidden protectorate. Inside, Lyra stood near the back of the hall, wearing a simple gray cloak that couldn't hide the faint glow beneath her skin. Her heart pounded so loudly she could barely hear herself breathe. Guards flanked the doors. Across the room, Luna Seraphine stood radiant and venomous in silver silk, her every smile sharpened like glass. And on the throne above them all sat Alpha King Kyle, expression unreadable, power simmering like a storm barely leashed. Then came the sound of iron, the heavy chains of authority. The Council of Elders entered, 7 of them, cloaked in black, their wolf insignias carved from obsidian. Their leader, Elder Varen, moved like a shadow, his eyes pale and ancient. "Your Majesty," he greeted Kyle, voice smooth but cold. "We come on urgent word from your Luna. She claims an abomination walks your court." His gaze slid to Lyra, and the hall fell silent. "Is this the creature?" Lyra stiffened, every instinct screaming to flee. Kyle rose from his throne, slow and deliberate. "She is not a creature," he said. "She is under my protection." Varen's lips curved into a humorless smile. "Then you admit she bears the mark of forbidden blood?" Kyle's jaw flexed. "I admit nothing until truth is proven." Seraphine's laughter broke through the tension, soft, cruel, echoing through the hall. "Oh, but we saw it," she said, stepping forward. "She glowed, Elder, like the moon herself had spilled into her veins. She's dangerous." Varen turned to Lyra. "Show us your arm," he commanded. Lyra hesitated. "I said," he repeated, "show it." Her hands trembled as she pulled back the sleeve of her cloak. The faint blue light beneath her skin shimmered in the dim torchlight. Undeniable, beautiful, and damning. The room erupted in gasps. Seraphine smirked, victorious. "See? The blood of the moon, the same line that once destroyed 3 kingdoms." Varen's tone grew harsh. "Your Majesty, this cannot stand. You know the old law. Any born of that blood must be executed before they—" "Enough!" Kyle growled, his voice thundering through the chamber. The torches flared, responding to his anger. This law was written by cowards, by wolves too afraid of what they didn't understand. Varen's eyes narrowed. "And what are you then, King Kyle? Brave or blinded?" Kyle descended the steps from his throne, stopping beside Lyra. His hand rested briefly on her shoulder, steadying her. "I know power when I see it, and I know fear when I smell it. You reek of both." The crowd murmured, unsettled. Seraphine stepped closer, venom dripping from her voice. "You would defy the council for her? For an Omega who should have died at birth?" Kyle's eyes flashed gold. "Watch your words." "Or what? You'll protect her the way you failed to protect me." The hall went still. The accusation hung between them like a blade. Kyle's expression darkened, but he didn't respond. Instead, he turned to the council. "Lyra will not be executed. She will be trained, under my command." Varen's face hardened. "If you defy us, King, we will report this to the high seat. You risk war." Kyle's reply was calm but deadly. "Then war it shall be." Gasps rippled through the chamber. Seraphine's mask of confidence faltered for the briefest moment. Lyra's knees almost gave way under the weight of it all. War, death, destiny, swirling around her like a rising storm. As the council departed, the hall filled with noise. Guards shouting orders, servants scattering, wolves whispering the king's rebellion. Kyle turned to Lyra, his voice low. "You've started something you can't walk away from now." Lyra looked up, eyes glistening. "I never asked for any of this." "No," Kyle said, meeting her gaze, "but the moon chose you anyway." Outside, thunder rolled across the mountains. The wolves of Crescent Fang howled in unease as black banners rose above the fortress. In a single day, the king had defied the council, the Louna had tasted humiliation, and Anomega's hidden blood had set the kingdom on fire. And far beyond the borders, unseen by all, a figure cloaked in white watched the skies and whispered, "At last, the moon blood awakens." That night, the fortress slept uneasily. The air was thick with the scent of rain and unrest. Outside the grand hall, the banners of Crescent Fang hung limp and dark, their edges frayed by wind. Inside, in the chamber lit by a single candle, Lyra sat on the edge of a low bed, her cloak wrapped tight around her shoulders. She couldn't stop shaking. Every sound, a guard's footsteps, a wolf's distant howl, made her flinch. She had never felt more trapped, more exposed. The glow beneath her skin had dimmed again, but the memory of the council's stares still burned. To them, she wasn't a person. She was a weapon waiting to go off. And deep down, part of her feared they were right. What if the light inside her really was meant to destroy? The door opened softly. Alpha King Kyle entered the room, his presence filling it like a tide. He carried no guards this time, no crown, only quiet exhaustion and the faint scent of pine and iron. Lyra looked up, startled. "Your Majesty," she whispered, lowering her gaze. "Don't," he said gently, "not when we're alone." He pulled a chair beside her bed and sat, his eyes studying her face. "You haven't eaten," he said. "The healer told me." "I can't," she admitted, voice barely audible. "Every time I close my eyes, I see their faces." Kyle's jaw tightened. "They'll not touch you again, not while I draw breath." The words were quiet, but firm, a promise wrapped in thunder. Lyra's eyes shimmered. "Why?" she asked softly. "You barely know me." Kyle leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Because I see something in you I've seen only once before," he said. "My mother was a seer. Before she died, she told me the moon would send light into darkness, a power that would either save or ruin the wolves. When I saw you that night, bleeding in the courtyard, I knew her prophecy had found its answer." Lyra's breath hitched. "You think I'm meant to save you?" "No," he said. "I think you're meant to save us all." His voice held a conviction that frightened her. "But I don't even know what I am." Kyle's expression softened. "Then we'll find out together." He stood and walked toward the window, looking out over the moonlit forest. "The council will send soldiers soon. They won't rest until they have your head. We need to leave before dawn." Lyra froze. "Leave? Where would we go?" "To the northern wilds. There's a monastery hidden beyond the mountains, the last place the old Moonblood were known to dwell. If anyone can teach you control, it's them." "You mean they're still alive?" Kyle glanced back at her. "Maybe. Or maybe their ghosts will teach us instead." Despite her fear, a faint spark of hope lit Lyra's chest. "You'd go with me?" she asked. Kyle's gaze held hers. "You think I'd let you walk into the unknown alone?" He stepped closer then, the room suddenly smaller. "Lyra," he said quietly, "I can't promise peace. I can't promise safety. But I can promise you this. No matter what comes, I won't let them break you." His voice was steady, but his eyes revealed something deeper, something fragile. For a long moment, the world outside disappeared. There was only her heartbeat, his shadow, and the moonlight spilling through the window like silver fire. "Get some rest," he said finally. "We leave before sunrise." As he turned to go, Lyra's voice stopped him. "Kyle," she said softly. He looked back. "Thank you." He didn't answer, just gave a nod that spoke louder than words, then vanished into the dark. Lyra lay back, staring at the ceiling as her mind spun. The king's promise echoed through her heart, steady and strange. No one had ever fought for her before. No one had ever believed she was worth saving. Now somehow, the fate of kingdoms rested in her trembling hands. She closed her eyes, whispering to the moon one final plea. If I'm truly your child, don't let me fail him. Outside, the wind carried her words into the night. Far away, on a mountain cloaked in silver mist, an ancient flame flickered back to life. The moon blood were stirring again. The fortress was silent when the moon dipped low behind the trees. A pale fog clung to the ground like breath on glass. Inside the stables, the scents of hay and rain mingled with tension as Lyra tightened the straps of her cloak. Her hands trembled. Every sound felt amplified. The creak of leather, the distant howl of wolves still loyal to the Luna. Outside, Kyle stood watch beside two saddled horses, his dark coat blending with the shadows. The torches on the walls flickered weakly, their light swallowed by mist. Keep your hood up, Kyle murmured without turning. If anyone sees your face before we reach the forest, we'll never make it out alive. Lyra nodded, pulling the hood tighter. Her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat. The last time she'd left the pack grounds, she'd been a servant carrying firewood. Tonight, she was fleeing as a traitor, a hunted bloodline, a secret reborn. As they mounted their horses, a sharp voice sliced through the quiet. Leaving so soon, my king? Luna Seraphine stepped from the fog, her silver gown catching the moonlight. Two guards flanked her, eyes glowing faint gold. Kyle turned, his expression unreadable. You shouldn't be awake. Oh, but I couldn't sleep, she purred, her smile brittle. Not while my husband sneaks off into the night with the glowing little ghost. Her words dripped venom. Lyra froze, guilt and fear tangling inside her chest. Kyle moved his horse slightly forward, shielding Lyra behind him. Step aside, Seraphine, he warned. The Luna's eyes narrowed, rage flickering beneath her calm. You would abandon your pack, defy your Luna, for her? Kyle's reply was soft but sharp enough to cut steel. I would defy the world itself if it meant protecting her. The silence that followed was suffocating. Seraphine's smirk faltered. For the first time, she looked truly wounded. You'll regret this, she whispered, her voice trembling between fury and heartbreak. You always choose the broken ones, KL, and they always destroy you. Her eyes glinted wetly in the moonlight before she turned away. Let them go, she told her guards coldly. The council will finish what I started. Kyle didn't wait for another word. Ride, he commanded. Lyra's horse leapt forward, hooves pounding against the wet earth. The wind tore through her cloak as the fortress vanished behind them, swallowed by the trees. They rode for hours beneath a silver sky, following the narrow path that wound through the forest. The world seemed to blur, branches whipping past, mist curling around their legs. Lyra's muscles burned, but she didn't dare slow down. Every time she looked over her shoulder, she expected to see glowing eyes in the dark. Kyle rode ahead, silent, his posture tense. At last, when the first streaks of dawn began to bleed across the horizon, he slowed his horse near a clearing surrounded by towering pines. We'll rest here, he said. Lyra dismounted shakily, her legs trembling. Do you think she'll follow us? Kyle shook his head. She doesn't need to. The council will. He knelt by a stream, washing the mud from his hands. We've got a head start, but not much. Lyra crouched nearby, staring at her reflection in the water. Her silver eyes shimmered faintly in the light of dawn. I don't understand any of this, she whispered. 1 week ago, I was cleaning floors. Now I'm this. Kyle looked up. Fate doesn't ask permission, he said quietly. It just chooses. She glanced at him, seeing the exhaustion behind his strength, the quiet sadness he tried to hide. Why are you really helping me, Kyle? His gaze held hers for a long moment. Because the last time the moon chose a child, I was too young to save her. I won't make that mistake again. Lyra swallowed hard. The wind rustled the trees above them, carrying the scent of rain and something faintly electric, the scent of change. As the first rays of sunlight broke through the clouds, Lyra stood, her cloak fluttering behind her. "Where to now?" she asked softly. Kyle, the expression hardened. "North," he said, "through the veil of shadows. If the legends are true, the old Moonblood Monastery lies beyond it." He paused, scanning the horizon. "But we'll have to move fast. The council will send hunters." Lyra nodded, determination flickering in her eyes. For the first time, she didn't feel like prey. She felt like a spark waiting to ignite. Kyle caught the look and almost smiled. "Stay close, and whatever happens, don't let go of the light inside you." As they mounted again, the forest whispered around them, alive with unseen movement. The moon hung low, pale and watchful, as if blessing their escape. And far behind them, in the fortress of Crescent Fang, Luna Seraphine stood at a window, watching the same dawn rise. Her hands clenched on the balcony rail, knuckles white. "Run, little Moonblood. Run as far as you can. I'll still find you." Then she turned, her eyes glowing crimson in the fading night. Somewhere deep in the shadows, she began to summon something far darker than wolves. The northern wind cut sharp and cold as Lyra and Kyle rode into the vale. It wasn't a place meant for mortals or wolves. The trees here grew twisted and black, their roots tangled like sleeping serpents. Mist hung low, glowing faintly under the pale moonlight. Every few steps, Lyra could feel something watching from the shadows, eyes that weren't human, whispers that weren't made by wind. She gripped the reins tighter. "Kyle," she breathed, voice trembling. "This place feels wrong." He glanced back, his expression grim. "It is," he said. "The veil was cursed after the Moonblood fell. They say no wolf who enters leaves unchanged." The horse's hooves crunched softly on frostbitten earth. Somewhere in the distance, a low growl echoed. Lyra's heart skipped. "Then why are we here?" Kyle's voice dropped to a whisper, "Because it's the only path left." The mist thickened until it felt like walking through a dream. Lyra's breath came out in white clouds. "What's that sound?" she asked suddenly. Beneath the wind, a soft, rhythmic thump pulsed like a heartbeat. Kyle dismounted, holding up a hand for silence. The air crackled. From the fog ahead, faint figures began to appear, shadows shaped like wolves, moving without sound. Their eyes glowed faint silver, but their bodies shimmered like smoke. "Spirits," Kyle muttered, "the ghosts of those who fell in the war." Lyra's pulse quickened. One of the ghost wolves drifted close, its translucent muzzle brushing her arm. For a moment, she could feel its sorrow, ancient and endless. "They're not attacking," she whispered. Kyle shook his head. "No, they're warning us." Then came a new sound, hooves pounding hard against the earth. "Hunters," Kyle hissed. "They found us." Lyra turned just as arrows whistled through the air. One struck a tree inches from her face. Kyle grabbed her wrist. "Run!" They dashed through the veil, weaving between trees as shadows chased them. Bolts of silver magic tore through the fog, lighting the woods with flashes of blue flame. Lyra's lungs burned. Her cloak snagged on a branch. Behind them, armored riders broke through the mist. Council hunters, their symbols gleaming on their chests. Kyle spun, raising his hand. A burst of dark energy exploded outward, knocking two riders off their mounts. But there were more, too many. "Kyle!" Lyra shouted, as one hunter leapt from his horse, blade glowing with runes. Kyle blocked the strike, the force sending him stumbling backward. Lyra could see blood darkening his sleeve. Without thinking, she threw herself between them. Her hands glowed white-hot, brighter than she'd ever seen. The hunter hesitated, but too late. Light erupted from Lyra's palms, blasting him backward into a tree. The forest went silent again, save for Lyra's ragged breaths. Her body trembled with power she couldn't control. The mist around her began to swirl faster, responding to her pulse. "Lyra, stop!" Kyle shouted, but his voice sounded far away. She could feel something waking deep within her chest, something ancient and wild. The ghost wolves howled in unison, their cries echoing through the veil. A beam of pure moonlight burst through the clouds, striking her where she stood. The light coursed through her veins, wrapping her in silver fire. When it faded, she collapsed to her knees, gasping. Kyle rushed to her side. "Lyra," he said, gripping her shoulders. Her skin glowed faintly, veins pulsing like molten silver. I didn't mean to," she whispered. It happened." He helped her up gently. "You didn't lose control," he said softly. "You defended us. The moon answered you." She looked into his eyes, tears forming. "But what if next time I can't stop it?" "Then I'll stop you," he said, his voice steady but warm, "until you can learn to stop yourself." The mist began to thin, revealing a stone archway carved with ancient runes at the far end of the valley. "There," Kaio said, "the monastery gate." Lyra wept her tears and nodded. Together they moved toward it, limping, exhausted, but alive. As they stepped through the archway, the world changed. The air grew warmer. The mist cleared completely, revealing a moonlit courtyard lined with statues of wolves. A great door stood ahead, carved with the symbol of the moonblood. Lyra reached out, pressing her hand against it. The carvings began to glow, and with a deep rumble, the doors opened. "They were real," she whispered. Kyle smiled faintly. "Then maybe their wisdom still lives." But far behind them, back in the veil, the shadows stirred again. The fallen hunters' bodies were gone, dragged away by something unseen. And high above the forest, hidden among the trees, a pair of crimson eyes watched their every move. Luna Seraphine had found her prey. The door groaned open like thunder rolling through the mountains. Lyra stepped into the monastery courtyard, her breath catching at the sight. Vines climbed the marble walls, wrapping around statues of wolves and warriors long forgotten. A pale silver flame burned in iron bowls, though no one had lit them in centuries. The air felt heavy, ancient, as if holding its breath. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "And alive," Kale murmured beside her. "The moonblood magic still lingers here." As they crossed the cracked stone floor, faint voices echoed in the distance, whispers carried by wind that spoke a language neither of them knew. Lyra's skin prickled. She could feel something pulsing beneath the earth, like a sleeping heart. "Do you think anyone's still here?" she asked. Kale scanned the shadows. "If they are, they've been waiting a long time." They followed a narrow passage leading to the central hall. Moonlight spilled through a broken ceiling, illuminating a massive mural on the far wall, wolves kneeling before a woman cloaked in light. Her eyes looked eerily like Lyra's. "Who is she?" Lyra asked softly. Kale stepped closer, tracing the ancient script below the painting. "Selene, first of the moonblood," he read aloud. "The one who forged peace between wolves and humans before it was lost." Lyra stared at the figure's outstretched hands, the same glow etched into the stone that sometimes flickered through her veins. "Do you think I'm like her?" Kale turned to her, his expression unreadable. I think you're what she left behind." His tone carried both awe and warning. Before Lyra could reply, a sound echoed from the shadows, a cane capping against stone. They spun around. An old woman emerged from the darkness, her silver hair long and wild, her eyes gleaming like frost. "So, the lost bloodline breathes again." Kale instinctively stepped in front of Lyra. "Who are you?" The woman smiled faintly. "The last keeper of this place. I've watched the moons rise and fall, waiting for the light to return." Her gaze shifted to Lyra. "And now it burns again." Lyra's heart pounded. "You know what I am?" The woman nodded. "You are Moonborn, the last of a cursed promise. Your power is not a gift, child. It's a test." Lyra swallowed hard. "Then teach me to control it." The woman's smile faded. "Control is not what you need. Understanding is." She gestured toward a stone platform in the center of the hall. "Come," she said. Lyra hesitated, then stepped forward. The moment her feet touched the platform, the air trembled. Silver light spiraled from the floor, wrapping around her body. Visions flashed through her mind, battles, fire, betrayal, and the face of a woman who looked like her crying under the blood moon. Lyra gasped. "What is this?" The old woman's voice echoed like thunder. "The memory of your kind. The Moonblood were born not to rule, but to remind the world of balance. When wolves forgot mercy, they burned. When humans forgot reverence, they fell. And now," her eyes darkened, "the balance trembles again." The light faded and Lyra collapsed to her knees, panting. Kale rushed to her side. "Enough," he snapped. "She's exhausted." The old woman watched them quietly. "The child of light cannot hide from what she is, but she must learn quickly. The darkness hunts her even now." Kale's expression hardened. "You mean Seraphine?" The woman nodded slowly. "The Luna has already begun her summoning. She means to bind the shadow wolf, the same creature that destroyed the first Moonblood." Lyra's stomach turned cold. "Then we have to stop her." The old woman turned to the mural. "To fight darkness, you must first embrace your light. But light without restraint burns everything it touches." She reached into her cloak and handed Lyra a small crystal pulsing faintly with moonlight. "When the time comes, this will reveal what kind of soul you truly are." Lyra took it carefully, the glow reflecting in her eyes. "What if I fail?" The woman smiled, faint and sad. "Then the world will fall with you." As night settled over the monastery, Kale stood guard at the broken gates, while Lyra sat beneath the mural, the crystal clutched tight in her palm. The stars above seemed closer here, brighter, as though watching her. She thought of the Omega she used to be, the girl no one saw, no one cared for, and wondered how that girl had become the hope of an entire world. Kale looked back at her, his voice low. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we move to stop the Luna." Lyra nodded, though she knew sleep wouldn't come. The crystal pulsed softly in her hand, syncing with her heartbeat. Somewhere deep within the monastery, ancient runes began to glow once more, as if recognizing their heir. The Moonblood legacy had awakened, and dawn would bring war. The night before battle was silent, but heavy, like the air before a storm breaks. Lyra lay awake inside the monastery chamber, the crystal glowing faintly in her hand. Every pulse of light felt like a heartbeat, steady, urgent, alive. The old woman's warning echoed in her mind. Light without restraint burns everything it touches. Lyra stared at the crystal, terrified that those words might be her truth. What if the light inside her wasn't meant to save anyone, but destroy? Outside, the wind howled through the broken walls, carrying whispers that didn't sound like the wind at all. She rose quietly, slipping from her bed of woven moss. The moon hung low and red, a blood moon. "It's starting," a voice said from the doorway. Kale stood there, his armor faintly gleaming. He looked older somehow, carved by worry and duty. "Seraphine's ritual," he said. "The old keeper just felt it. We don't have much time." They climbed to the roof of the monastery, where the stars shone through a thin veil of cloud. Far across the mountains, the horizon glowed faint crimson. The earth itself seemed to pulse in rhythm with it. Kale's jaw tightened. "She's calling it." Lyra followed his gaze. "The shadow wolf?" He nodded. "The first creature born of the moon's rejection, a beast of darkness and fury. If she binds it, she won't just destroy me. She'll enslave every pack under the moon." Lyra's stomach twisted. "And we can't stop her unless you awaken fully," Kale finished quietly. "Your power's the only thing that can stand against it." Lyra looked down at her hands, faintly glowing. "What if I can't control it?" Kale turned to her, placing a hand over hers. "Then I'll help you find the balance. Like the moon and the tide, you pull, I steady." His touch grounded her. "You trust me that much?" she asked. He gave a faint smile. "I already do." Before she could reply, the ground trembled. A deep, guttural howl rolled across the mountains, a sound too vast to belong to any living wolf. The sky dimmed, and clouds spiraled unnaturally around the red moon. "It's begun," Kale said, his voice low. The old woman burst onto the rooftop, her robes whipping in the wind. "She's opened the rift," she cried. "The shadow wolf is crossing into this realm." Lyra's pulse raced. "What do we do?" "You fight the pull," the old woman said. "The light within you must face its twin. But beware, child. Darkness doesn't always attack. Sometimes it tempts." The words barely left her lips before a massive shockwave hit, knocking them backward. The mountains groaned. Far away, the forest ignited with black fire. Out of that fire came movement, something colossal, four-legged, its body forged from smoke and bone. Its eyes glowed crimson. The shadow wolf had arisen. Kale drew his sword, its blade shimmering with silver energy. "Stay behind me," he said. But Lyra shook her head. "No, this is my fight too." The beast roared, shaking the valley. Its voice carried power, ancient, hungry. Lyra felt it crawl into her mind, whispering, "You don't belong to them. You belong to me. You are my reflection." Her knees buckled as pain seared through her chest. The crystal in her hand burned white hot. "Lyra!" Kale shouted, grabbing her arm. "Fight it!" "I'm trying," she gasped. The old woman began chanting, her voice trembling but steady. The air shimmered as circles of light appeared beneath Lyra's feet. "Use the bond," the woman urged. "Light needs an anchor." Lyra looked at Kale. "Then anchor me," she cried. He gripped her hands tight, pressing his forehead to hers. "You're not alone," he whispered. "Do you hear me? You're not alone." The shadow wolf lunged, darkness spiraling around it. Lyra screamed as her body erupted with silver fire, the crystal in her palm shattering into light. The world exploded in brilliance, moonlight and shadow colliding in midair. For a moment, everything froze. Lyra stood at the center of the storm, her eyes glowing like twin stars, her aura blinding. "You will not take me," she whispered. The beast howled as its own darkness began to unravel. Kale held his ground, shielding her as the light consumed the sky. The mountains shook with the force of it. Then silence, deep and absolute. When the light faded, Lyra collapsed, her power spent. Kale caught her before she hit the ground. Smoke rose from the valley below, where the shadow wolf had vanished. "It's gone," he whispered, holding her close. But the old woman's face was grave. "No," she said softly. It's not gone. It's inside her now. The storm had passed, but silence brought no peace. Lyra awoke in the monastery hours later, the faint glow of moonlight spilling through the shattered ceiling. Her body ached as though lightning had torn through her veins. The moment she tried to sit up, pain lanced across her chest, forcing her back down. Her fingers shook. Her reflection in the pool beside her flickered, her silver eyes now streaked with faint threads of red. She gasped. "No, no, no," she whispered. "It's in me." The old woman appeared at her side, her expression sorrowful. "I warned you, child. When light and shadow meet, one never leaves unchanged." Lyra gripped her arm desperately. "Tell me how to get it out." The old woman's eyes softened with pity. "You can't. You must tame it or be devoured by it." Before Lyra could respond, Cale entered, his face drawn and tired. His armor was scratched, his hands still blood-stained from the battle. "You shouldn't be moving," he said, gently kneeling beside her. "You burned through every drop of power you had." Lyra looked away. "That's not all I burned." She hesitated, then whispered, "It's inside me, Cale. The shadow wolf. I can feel it, like claws scraping behind my ribs." Cale's jaw tightened. "Then we'll find a way to cage it." "You don't understand," she snapped, her voice breaking. "It's whispering to me, telling me to tear, to kill, to burn." Her breathing quickened. Cale reached out, cupping her face in his hands. "Then listen louder to me. You are not what it wants you to be." His voice steadied her trembling heart. For a brief moment, the red in her eyes flickered and faded. The old woman stepped closer. "There is one way," she said softly, "but it is dangerous." Cale stood. "Tell us." A moon-binding ritual. Light and shadow can only coexist if bound by something stronger than both: will, love, or sacrifice. The ritual requires a bond mate, someone who shares the bearer's soul frequency. Lyra frowned. "A bond mate?" The woman nodded. "A heart intertwined deeply enough to anchor the light when the darkness rises." Her gaze shifted to Cale. "Perhaps the bond already exists." Silence hung heavy between them. Cale's throat tightened. "You mean me?" The woman's eyes glowed faintly. "You've already begun to share her power." Her heartbeat synced to yours in the veil. Fate has already chosen. Lyra's chest rose and fell rapidly. "If we do this, what happens?" "If you succeed," said the old woman, "the darkness will be sealed inside your bond. But if you fail," she trailed off. Cale finished for her. "It kills us both." They stared at each other, the weight of that truth sinking in. Cale took a slow breath, then nodded. "Then we do it." Lyra's eyes widened. "No, I won't let you die for me." He stepped closer, his voice low but firm. "You already saved me, Lyra. When you stood between me and that blade, when you believed I was more than a king with a broken crown, if this is the price, I'll pay it." Her voice shook. "You're a fool." "Maybe, but I'm your fool." The old woman smiled faintly. "Then come. The ritual must be done under the full moon. Tonight, it reaches its zenith." As the night deepened, they stood beneath the open sky at the monastery's heart. Silver light bathed them, cold and pure. The old woman began to chant, ancient words curling through the air like music. Lyra and Cale faced each other, their hands joined, the ground beneath them etched with runes of light. "Close your eyes," the old woman commanded. "Let your hearts align." Lyra did. She felt Cale's warmth pulse through her palms, steady and strong. The darkness within her stirred, snarling. Her veins flared with black fire. "Cale," She gasped. I can't hold it. Yes, you can, he said, gripping title. Focus on my voice. You're not alone. The shadows clawed at her mind, but Kale's presence burned like an anchor in a storm. Their breaths synced. The light from the runes rose higher, brighter, until it swallowed them both. When the brilliance faded, Lyra fell forward, collapsing into Kale's arms. The red in her eyes was gone, replaced with pure silver. The air was still again. The old woman exhaled. It's done, she whispered. The bond is sealed. Kale brushed a strand of hair from Lyra's face. She's safe. The old woman's gaze lingered on them. For now, but the bond will draw the darkness to you both. The Louna will feel it, and she will come. Kale lifted Lyra gently. Then let her come, he said, voice like steel. This time, she won't find a frightened Omega. She'll find her end. As the moon bathed them in silver light, the two of them stood together, bound by destiny and by a power greater than either had ever known. The next night bled red across the horizon. Smoke rose from the valleys below as Luna Seraphine led her army north. Thousands of wolves marched in formation, silver-armored alphas, black-furred betas, and her personal guard, each one marked with her crimson sigil. Above them, the blood moon hung swollen and full, casting a sickly light on the forest. Seraphine rode at the front on a black stallion, her gown flowing like liquid shadow, her eyes glowing a deep, unnatural scarlet. The bond between Lyra and Kale burned faintly in her chest. She could feel them now, like a heartbeat that wasn't her own. Found you, she whispered. Behind her, the council priests began their chants, calling upon forbidden magic. The ground cracked and black mist rose from the earth, curling around her army like armor. By dawn, she said coldly, the moon blood's light will die. At the monastery, Lyra jolted awake. Her heart raced, her hand flying to her chest where the bond mark pulsed like fire. She's coming, she gasped. Kale was already awake, standing by the window in full armor. His gaze was fixed on the darkening horizon. I know, he said quietly. I felt it too. The old woman entered, carrying a small vial of shimmering silver liquid. The Louna has called the storm, she said. Once she reaches these walls, no barrier will hold. Lyra stood, still weak from the ritual. Then we fight. The woman's eyes flicked to her. You've only just bound your light, child. Use it recklessly and it will consume you. Lyra's voice was steady, though fear flickered beneath. Then I'll burn if I must, but I won't run. Kale looked at her, pride softening the heart lines of his face. You sound like a queen, he said quietly. I'm no queen, she replied. Not yet. The ground trembled before dawn. The first wave of Seraphine's army broke through the valley gates, their howls shaking the stones. Kale's soldiers, what few remained loyal, took position along the walls. The air crackled with tension, the scent of steel and blood already thick. Hold the line, Kale roared, raising his sword. Lightning flashed, illuminating the Luna's forces pouring through the mist. Arrows blazed with silver fire, tearing across the sky. The clash was instant and brutal. Lyra fought beside Kale, her hands glowing with contained power. Each time she struck, beams of silver light exploded outward, cutting through darkness like dawn through night. But for every enemy that fell, 10 more rose. The battle became a storm of fur and flame. Through it all, Lyra could feel Seraphine drawing closer, her presence like ice crawling up her spine. Then, out of the chaos, Seraphine appeared. She walked across the battlefield untouched, her gown unsoiled, her expression calm and cruel. The army seemed to part for her, as if even death hesitated to draw near. So this is your precious light, she sneered, her gaze locking on Lyra. Pathetic. Lyra stepped forward, silver fire dancing at her fingertips. You tortured me. You called me nothing, but I am everything you feared I would become. Seraphine laughed, the sound low and sharp. You think you've won because you glow? You are a child playing with God fire, Let me show you what true power feels like." She raised her hands and the sky turned black. The moon vanished behind a shroud of crimson clouds. The shadow wolf's voice echoed faintly, bound still inside Lyra, but answering Seraphine's call. Lyra gasped, pain ripping through her bond. "KL, she's pulling it from me." KL gritted his teeth, stepping in front of her. "Then she'll have to kill me first." Seraphine smirked. "Gladly." Darkness surged from her palm, slamming into KL. He hit the ground hard, blood seeping from his shoulder. "KL!" Lyra screamed, kneeling beside him. He gripped her hand weakly. "Don't hold back," he whispered. "Promise me." Her tears burned hot against her cheeks. "But if I lose control, then I'll still find you, in this life or the next." His hand went limp. Something inside Lyra broke. Her scream ripped through the battlefield, shaking the air itself. The light burst from her in waves, pure, blinding, unstoppable. Seraphine shielded her face as the blast tore through the valley, scattering wolves like leaves in a storm. When the light cleared, Lyra stood alone at the center, her hair lifted by an unseen wind, her eyes glowing white. Seraphine's smile faltered. "What are you?" she whispered. Lyra's voice echoed with a strange duality, both her own and something older. "The balance you broke." The moon burst free from its crimson veil, flooding the battlefield with silver light. For the first time, Seraphine looked afraid. "No," she hissed. "You're supposed to serve the moon. I am the Luna." "Not anymore," Lyra said softly. Then she raised her hand, and the light descended like judgment. Seraphine screamed as her shadow split away from her body, burnt to ash by the same power she had tried to steal. The storm ceased. The battle fell silent. Lyra dropped to her knees, trembling, the last of her strength fading. KO lay motionless beside her. The old woman appeared through the smoke, her eyes filled with both awe and sorrow. "You've done it," she said quietly. "But every light that burns that bright leaves scars."
The battlefield was silent. The silver light faded, leaving only smoke and moonlit ash. Thousands of wolves lay scattered across the valley, some dead, others groaning in pain. The blood moon had vanished, and the night was quiet again, almost peaceful. But peace felt wrong. Lyra knelt beside KL, her trembling hands hovering over his still chest. "KL," she whispered, her voice cracking. "It's over. Please, wake up." Her tears fell on his skin, glimmering faintly where they touched. For a moment, there was nothing. Then a faint spark pulsed beneath her palms. KL gasped, air tearing into his lungs like fire. Lyra sobbed in relief, pressing her forehead against his. "You came back," she whispered. He gave a weak smile. "Couldn't leave you to finish the fight without me." He tried to rise, but his body shook violently. She helped him sit, her hands glowing faintly to close the wound. "It's done," she said softly. "Seraphine is gone." But even as she said it, the earth trembled. A faint whisper slithered through the air, Seraphine's voice. "Did you think light alone could kill what lives in shadow?" Lyra's head snapped up. Across the ruined field, Seraphine's body lay still, but her shadow was moving. It stretched unnaturally long, crawling across the ground like smoke. The air turned cold again. "No," Lyra breathed. The old woman appeared beside her, her expression grim. "She's become what she served," the elder said. "The Luna's body dies, but her hatred lingers." The shadow rose, forming a shape, a woman of pure darkness, faceless, but unmistakably Seraphine. "You took everything from me," it hissed, voice like a storm. "My crown, my wolves, my throne." Lyra stood, her body shaking. "You took everything from me first," she said. The shadow lunged into her, crashing into her like ice. The force threw Lyra backward. Pain seared through her, but she fought to stay conscious. "Lyra!" Kale shouted, trying to rise, but the old woman stopped him. "If you touch her now, the darkness will take you both." Lyra gasped as cold fingers wrapped around her throat. "You can't kill what isn't alive," the shadow whispered. But Lyra remembered Kale's words. Don't hold back. Her hands began to glow again, only this time not with fire, but with soft moonlight. "Then I'll heal what's broken," she whispered. She pressed her hand against the shadow's chest. The darkness screamed, thrashing violently. Memories flooded Lyra's mind. Seraphine as a young woman, standing before the old Alpha King, betrayed, abandoned, turned cruel by pain. "You were human once," Lyra whispered through tears. "But you let hate eat what was left." The shadow faltered, its edges flickering. "Don't pity me," it shrieked. "I was born to rule." "No," Lyra said softly. "You were born to love, and you forgot how." The light spread through the darkness like dawn through fog. Seraphine's scream echoed until it became a whisper, and then nothing. The shadow disintegrated, scattering into glowing dust. The wind carried it away. The old woman exhaled deeply. "It's over," she said, though her tone was heavy with exhaustion. Lyra collapsed beside Kael, shaking. He caught her before she hit the ground. "You did it," he murmured. "You freed her." Lyra looked up at the stars that had finally returned to the sky. "No," she whispered. "She freed me." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The moonlight painted their faces in silver. Around them, the surviving wolves began to rise slowly, dazed, their eyes no longer clouded by darkness. The curse that bound them had lifted. Some fell to their knees, bowing toward Lyra in silence. She turned to Kael. "What now?" she asked softly. He smiled faintly. "Now we rebuild what she tried to destroy." They buried the fallen at dawn. The valley that had once been a battlefield was now a sea of quiet stone markers, each one carved with the names of the dead. The old woman led the ceremony, her voice trembling as she recited the ancient vows of peace. When it was done, Lyra stood at the edge of the field, looking down at her blood-stained hands. "I never wanted this," she said quietly. Kael came beside her, his arm slipping gently around her shoulders. "Neither did I, but maybe we were meant to end it." She looked up at him, her eyes glistening. "Do you think the moon will forgive us?" He smiled softly. The moon never held grudges, only lessons. Lyra rested her head against him, exhaustion finally overtaking her. The sun broke the horizon, warm light spilling over the valley. For the first time in years, there was no blood in the air, only the scent of morning. Later that night, Kael sat alone outside the monastery, watching the stars. Lyra approached quietly, her white hair glimmering faintly in the moonlight. "You should rest," she said gently. He glanced up, smiling. "Can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see it all again." She sat beside him, their shoulders brushing. "Do you think it'll ever leave us?" she asked. He shook his head. "No, but maybe it will fade." She nodded, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a small silver pendant, the symbol Seraphine once wore. "I found this where she fell. It used to mean power. Now, maybe it can mean peace." Kael took it, his thumb brushing the engraving. "Then we'll make it mean that," he said quietly. They sat in silence for a long time, the night wrapping around them softly. The war was over, but the scars would stay. And somehow, that felt right.
Morning arrived slowly over the valley, soft gold spilling across the ruins of what once was a kingdom. The fires had burned out, and the scent of blood had faded into the earth. Lyra stood atop the monastery steps, a cloak of white fur draped around her shoulders. Beneath it, her skin bore the faint traces of the moon bond, silver veins that pulsed gently beneath her flesh. The war had ended, but peace felt foreign, almost fragile. Below her, wolves rebuilt broken walls, raised tents, and tended to the wounded. Children, those who had been hidden during the chaos, peeked out, their laughter cautious but real. Kale approached quietly, his arms still bound from the battle. "They're calling you Louna now," he said with a faint smile. Lyra turned, her eyes soft. "I don't want a crown," she replied. "I just want the hurting to stop." Kale nodded. "Maybe that's what makes you worthy of it." He handed her a small bundle wrapped in cloth. "The moon blood crystal," he said. "The last one. The power's yours to keep or destroy." Lyra unwrapped it slowly. The crystal pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat trapped in glass. "Seraphine used it to control," she murmured, "to twist wolves into slaves of the moon." She held it up to the light. "But maybe it can heal instead." The old woman appeared behind them, her steps slow but steady. "Power never dies, child," she said. "It only changes hands. The choice you make now decides whether history repeats." Lyra looked out across the valley, the broken towers, the wounded, the graves marked with stone. "Then I'll choose differently," she said softly. She raised the crystal to her lips, whispered something ancient, and pressed it to her chest. Light spread through her body, gentle, silver, alive. When it faded, the crystal was gone, its energy absorbed into her heart. The old woman nodded approvingly. "So be it," she said. "The moon blood now lives through mercy, not fear." Days passed. The valley began to breathe again. Wolves from distant packs arrived, some skeptical, others desperate for peace. They came to see the girl who ended the blood moon, a once hopeless Omega who rose against the Luna herself. Lyra met them all with patience, her presence calm but commanding. Kale stood beside her, his gaze always watchful, loyal as shadow. One evening, during a gathering around the fire, a young Omega girl approached Lyra timidly. "Is it true? You used to be weak like us?" Lyra knelt, smiling gently. "I wasn't weak," she said softly. "I was invisible. There's a difference." The girl blinked. "And now?" Her gaze lifted to the stars. "Now, I shine where no one can ignore me." Around the fire, murmurs spread. Hope, awe, belief. Kale's eyes met hers across the flames, pride softening his usual stoicism. For the first time, the pack wasn't just surviving, they were beginning to live. But peace demanded more than rebuilding walls. It demanded forgiveness. Lyra knew this the night she walked alone to Seraphine's grave. It lay at the edge of the forest, beneath a tree still scarred by lightning. She knelt, brushing dust from the simple stone. "You wanted to be remembered, and you will be, but not for cruelty, for the lessons you left behind." The wind rustled softly through the branches, almost like a sigh. Lyra set the silver pendant she had carried since the battle atop the grave. "Rest now," she said. "The moon has forgiven you. So will we." As she turned to leave, a beam of light broke through the clouds, illuminating the stone. It wasn't bright, just enough to make the air shimmer. Lyra smiled faintly, her heart lighter than it had been in years. That night, the valley howled again, not in mourning, but in unity. Wolves from distant packs raised their voices to the moon, their calls blending into one song of renewal. Lyra and Kale stood at the highest ridge, overlooking it all. "You did it," Kale said, his voice low. "You turned a war into a home." Lyra looked at him, her expression soft but strong. "We did it," she said. The light survived because you believed it could. He reached for her hand, fingers brushing hers under the moonlight. What now? He asked. She smiled, the wind catching her hair like silver silk. Now, she whispered, we build a world where no one has to burn just to be seen. The moon rose high, bathing them both in light. For the first time in a long, long while, the night felt like a promise. And as their shadows blended into one beneath the stars, the story of the hopeless Omega, who became the moon's light, was sealed forever, etched not in blood, but in hope.
Thank you for staying till the end. Please do well to like and subscribe to the channel, and also don't forget to drop your thoughts in the comment. It means a lot to me.